see the people. Him and his girlfriend are tied up in the basement.
I guess Johnny tried to struggle, you know what I mean?
They're unconscious, ma'am.
What'd she say? We
Basically took care of him, you know what I mean?
We're gonna help her, ma'am. Oh my God.
At 10:41 p.m. on Sunday, January 30th, 2011, in the quiet suburban community of Holland, a small township in Lucas County, Ohio, a peaceful neighborhood of tidy single-family homes and tree-lined streets about 10 miles south of Toledo, 21-year-old Johnny Clark's cell phone lit up with a call from his friend Tiffany Williams. Johnny and his 20-year-old girlfriend Lisa Straub had just returned to Lisa's parents' home on Longacre Lane after picking Lisa up from her shift at TGI Fridays. The couple were planning a relaxed evening with friends. Tiffany and another friend named Zach Burkett were supposed to come over to play pool in the basement. The house was quiet, and Lisa's parents, Mary Beth and Jeff Straub, were thousands of miles away on a cruise ship in the Caribbean, celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. Johnny answered Tiffany's call on the second ring, but before they could even get through their hellos, Tiffany heard something through the phone that made the blood drain from her face. She heard Johnny's voice shift, suddenly sharp, loud, and alarmed. "Bro, what are you doing?" he snapped at someone. Then louder, "Bro, what are you doing?" Tiffany could hear a male voice in the background. She stayed on the line, frozen, straining to make sense of what she was hearing. Then Johnny told her he would call her back, and the line went dead. In the next 2 hours, 22 calls were made to Johnny's phone. None of them were answered. And when John Clark Sr. finally kicked down the door to the Straub family home in the early hours of January 31st, what he found inside the kitchen was a scene so horrific it would haunt him for the rest of his life. His son and Lisa Straub lying face up on the kitchen floor, their hands bound tightly behind their backs with black duct tape, plastic grocery bags duct taped over their heads, suffocated and murdered in the home where Lisa had grown up. A home that was supposed to be safe, supposed to be familiar, supposed to be the last place on earth that something like this could happen. Lisa Straub was born in 1990 and grew up in Holland, Ohio, in a loving, stable family. Her parents, Mary Beth and Jeff Straub, were hardworking, community-minded people who had built a comfortable life in Lucas County. Lisa was their daughter, and by all accounts, she was a bright, social, and warm-hearted young woman who was making her way in the world. At 20 years old, she was working at TGI Fridays and spending time with her boyfriend, Johnny Clark, a young man she had come to love deeply. Friends described Lisa as the kind of person who made everyone feel included, who was quick to laugh and slow to judge. She was close to her family and her circle of friends, and she had a quiet, unassuming strength that those who knew her admired. Johnny Clark was 21 years old, born in 1989, the son of John Clark Jr. and Maite Vasquez Clark. Johnny had grown up in the Toledo area and was deeply close to his mother, who called him multiple times a day, a habit born, as Maite later explained, from her Cuban heritage and the love of a mother who simply could not go too long without hearing her son's voice. On the evening of January 30th, 2011, Johnny called his mother at 8 p.m. to check in. She asked if he was okay, the way mothers do. Johnny laughed and told her, "Yes, Mom, I'm still alive." It was the last time Maite would speak to her son. Earlier that Sunday, Johnny had spent part of the afternoon at a friend's house watching the NFL Pro Bowl, the end-of-season All-Star game that, for most NFL fans, signals the close of football season. It was a typical, unremarkable January Sunday in Northwest Ohio, cold with remnants of the 5 inches of snow that had fallen earlier in the week still on the ground, though the roads had cleared by afternoon. Johnny enjoyed the game with friends, then headed out to pick Lisa up from her shift at TGI Fridays around 10 p.m. Together, they drove to the Straub family home on Longacre Lane, a home Johnny was familiar with, a home that felt like a second home to him. Lisa's parents had left for their cruise a few days earlier. It was a milestone celebration, 25 years of marriage, and Jeff and Mary Beth Straub had looked forward to the trip for months. Lisa was staying at the family home while they were away, a responsibility she took seriously. She and Johnny planned a quiet evening, expecting Tiffany and Zach to come over later. Johnny made calls on his phone, confirming plans, touching base with friends. Then, at 10:41 p.m., Tiffany called and everything changed. After the phone call abruptly ended, Tiffany Williams, whose last name happened to be the same as the man police would eventually charge with the murders, though they were not related, was deeply unsettled. She tried calling Johnny back repeatedly, but received no answer. She called Lisa's phone. No answer. Tiffany was aware that Johnny had some association with people involved in drug-related activities in the neighborhood, and she hesitated, uncertain what to do. For a period, she tried to rationalize what she had heard. Perhaps it had been nothing. Perhaps there had been a confrontation that had resolved itself. But the silence from Johnny's phone ate at her. She eventually drove to the house on Longacre Lane to check. When Tiffany arrived at the Straub home, she observed that something was wrong. The house was dark and quiet, but she noticed signs of disturbance. The scene was not as it should have been. Rather than going inside, Tiffany drove away, deeply shaken, and then reached out to Johnny's mother, Maite Vasquez Clark, to tell her what she had heard on the phone and that she was unable to reach Johnny. Maite immediately called 911. Lucas County Sheriff's deputies responded to the Straub home on Longacre Lane on 2 separate occasions during the night. Both times, from the outside, the house appeared undisturbed. Deputies reportedly checked the exterior, saw no obvious signs of forced entry or violence, and determined there was nothing suspicious. They left without entering the home. It was a critical and catastrophic oversight. By early morning on January 31st, Maite was beside herself with worry. Johnny simply did not go silent like this. 22 unanswered calls, hours without contact. It was not him. In the early morning hours, John Clark Jr., Johnny's father, drove to the house on Longacre Lane himself. When no one responded to his knocking and the door was locked, John Clark Jr. did what any desperate parent would do. He kicked the door down. What he saw inside the kitchen will stay with him forever. His son Johnny was lying on the kitchen floor, face up, his hands bound tightly behind his back with black duct tape, a plastic grocery bag duct-taped securely over his head. Beside Johnny, in the opposite direction, lay Lisa Straub, similarly bound, a plastic bag duct-taped over her face. John Clark Jr. tore the bags open, exposing Johnny's face and then Lisa's face. But it was already too late. Both were dead. He called 911 immediately. When Lucas County Sheriff's deputies arrived for the 3rd time that night, this time entering the home, they found not just the bodies of Johnny and Lisa, but a scene of chaos and deliberate violence. In the kitchen and surrounding rooms, signs of a struggle and a frenzied search were everywhere. A plant pot and a clock had been knocked over. Cabinet doors hung open, as if someone had rifled through them searching for valuables. Broken pieces of a cell phone were scattered across the floor. In the sunroom adjacent to the kitchen, a torn photograph of Johnny and Lisa was found, the couple whose lives had just been snuffed out, their image literally ripped apart. The door between the garage and the kitchen showed significant damage. The deadbolt had been bowed and strained, as if someone had been pushing against it from the other side. Investigators concluded that Johnny and Lisa had been in the kitchen or near the garage entrance when they became aware of intruders entering through the garage. They had tried to brace the interior door to keep the attackers out, but the door had not held. The manner of death, plastic bags duct-taped over the victims' heads, was unusual and deeply troubling. The Lucas County medical examiner confirmed that both Johnny Clark and Lisa Straub had died from asphyxiation. The duct tape and bags had been brought to the scene by the killers. They were not items found in the Straub home. The premeditation implied by this detail was chilling.
Whoever had entered that house that night had come prepared to bind and suffocate their victims. This was not a spontaneous confrontation, it was a planned execution. Medical examiners noted that based on the method of killing, the victims would have remained conscious for several agonizing minutes as the oxygen inside the bags was depleted. Lucas County Sheriff's investigators, led by Detective Jeff Kozak, processed the crime scene with meticulous care. Forensic teams swept every surface for fingerprints, fibers, and biological material. On the floor near the service door between the garage and the kitchen, the entry point investigators believed the attackers had used, a cigarette butt was discovered. It was a small, seemingly insignificant piece of evidence, but it would become the most critical item in the entire case. Investigators collected it, bagged it, and sent it for DNA analysis. The results came back and contained a stunning finding. The cigarette butt contained DNA profiles from 2 different male individuals. One profile matched a man named Samuel Todd Williams. The other matched a man named Cameo Pettiway. Law enforcement immediately began building profiles of both men and working to establish their connections to Johnny Clark, Lisa Straub, and the events of January 31st. Samuel Todd Williams was a young man from the Toledo area with prior criminal history. Investigators learned that Samuel Todd Williams had connections to Johnny Clark through mutual acquaintances in the community. As detectives dug deeper, they began to piece together a motive: robbery. The evidence suggested the attack had been planned. The attackers knew Lisa's parents were away on their cruise, and the house would effectively be in the possession of 2 young adults, alone. The house had been ransacked in search of cash and valuables. The killers had brought their own materials, duct tape and plastic bags, with them, indicating advanced planning. Additional DNA evidence emerged from the crime scene. DNA was found on the duct tape used to bind the couple. Unlike the cigarette butt DNA, which matched Williams and Pettiway, this DNA did not match anyone in national DNA databases. Its presence pointed to the involvement of additional yet unidentified individuals. Investigators concluded that more than 2 people had participated in the attack, both on the DNA evidence and on the logistics of the crime: subduing 2 young adults, binding them, searching the house, and maintaining control over both victims simultaneously would have been difficult for just 2 people to accomplish. Detectives arrested Samuel Todd Williams in circumstances that were simultaneously remarkable and almost mundane. Marshals and detectives who had been building a case against Williams served an arrest warrant related to an outstanding domestic violence probation violation. Williams, unaware that investigators had connected him to the murders, was laid down and handcuffed in the street. As the marshal tightened the cuffs, Williams reportedly said, bewildered, "You really come and get people for misdemeanor domestic violence cases?" He had no idea what was coming next. 11 minutes into his subsequent interview with detectives, investigators dropped photographs of Johnny Clark and Lisa Straub on the table in front of him. The mood in the room changed completely. This was not about domestic violence or drugs or probation. This was about murder.
Williams denied involvement. He maintained a consistent denial throughout the investigation, claiming he had nothing to do with the murders and that he had been elsewhere that night. A woman named Destiny Madrid, with whom Williams was romantically involved, told detectives that Williams had been with her on the night of January 30th, 2011, and that they had gone to a local bar together. The alibi was noted, but investigators and prosecutors believed the DNA evidence was irrefutable. The cigarette butt with Williams' DNA, found at the precise point of entry to the crime scene, was damning. Cameo Pettiway, the second man whose DNA had been identified on the cigarette butt, was also arrested and charged. The cases of Williams and Pettiway were separated for trial purposes, but in a remarkable legal development, both trials were held simultaneously in July 2012 on different floors of the same Lucas County courthouse, with 2 separate juries hearing 2 separate cases at the same time.
The trial of Samuel Todd Williams began in late July 2012. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence, the witness testimony from Tiffany Williams about the phone call, Johnny's mother's frantic attempts to reach her son, the damage to the garage door, and testimony from a fellow inmate at the county jail who claimed Williams had confessed to the murders while they were both incarcerated. The inmate, Eric Yingling, testified that Williams had told him details of the crime consistent with the physical evidence at the scene. Williams denied ever having confided in Yingling, and in his later statements maintained that Yingling's wife had researched the case online and that Yingling had fabricated the confession from publicly available information. The jury deliberated and returned a verdict of guilty on all counts. On July 27, 2012, Samuel Todd Williams was found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and aggravated burglary. The jury was then asked to deliberate on the sentencing recommendation. Under Ohio law at the time, if the jury deadlocked on sentencing, the responsibility fell to the judge. In Williams' case, the jury deadlocked and was unable to reach a unanimous verdict on the death penalty. Judge Matthew Heerman sentenced Williams to 2 consecutive terms of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the aggravated murder charges, plus 2 10-year terms for the kidnapping charges and a further 10-year term for the aggravated burglary charge. Williams, who had smiled at family members just before the verdict was read, heard his fate without visible emotion. On the floor above, the trial of Cameo Pettyway was reaching a very different conclusion. Despite the DNA evidence linking Pettyway to the cigarette butt found at the scene, Pettyway's jury acquitted him of all charges. The acquittal was a shock to investigators and to the families of Johnny and Lisa, though legal analysts noted that the presence of Pettyway's DNA on a shared cigarette butt rather than on the victims themselves or on items directly associated with the crime was a weaker link than the evidence against Williams. For the Clark and Straub families, the verdicts brought deeply mixed emotions. The conviction of Samuel Williams provided some measure of justice, but the acquittal of Cameo Pettyway, the unidentified DNA on the duct tape, and the lingering questions about how many people had been involved in the attack left them with a profound sense that the full truth had not been uncovered. Quote, "We as a family are broken," said Jim Verboski, Lisa's uncle, in the days following the murders. That brokenness did not heal with the verdict. In the years following the conviction, the Lucas County Sheriff's Department continued to pursue the unidentified DNA found on the duct tape used to bind Johnny and Lisa. This DNA, which did not match Williams, Pettyway, or anyone in national criminal databases, represented the possibility that at least one other killer remained free. Investigators took DNA samples from dozens of people associated with the victims, their acquaintances, and their broader social circles, all in an effort to find a match. None were found. In the early 2020s, investigators and the families began exploring the possibility of genetic genealogy, the same forensic technique that had cracked other notorious cold cases, including the Golden State Killer case in California. Genetic genealogy involves uploading an unidentified DNA profile to consumer ancestry databases and using the resulting family matches to build genealogical trees that can eventually identify an unknown subject. The technique had revolutionized cold case investigations, providing breakthroughs in cases that had been dormant for decades. As of 2024, genetic genealogy had become an active component of the ongoing investigation into the Lisa Straub and Johnny Clark murders. WTOL 11 investigative reporter Brian Duggar, who had followed the case for years, confirmed that investigators were pursuing this avenue. Tiffany Williams, whose decision not to call 911 immediately upon hearing the disturbance on Johnny's phone has haunted her, has lived with the weight of that night ever since. She was aware of drug-related activity in the social circle around the house and hesitated to contact police, fearing the consequences. By the time she acted and contacted Johnny's mother, it was too late. In interviews, she has described the moment she heard Johnny's alarmed voice on the phone as something she will never stop hearing. Johnny's mother, Métis Vasquez Clark, has been one of the most vocal advocates for continued investigation into the case. She is certain that additional perpetrators remain unidentified and free. She has said in interviews, "I know there were more people involved, and I won't stop until they are found." The Clark family's faith in investigators has been tested repeatedly by the 2 initial police visits to the house that found nothing, by the acquittal of Pettyway, and by the years of silence from the unidentified DNA samples. But they have not given up. The Straub family, whose home became the scene of the murders while they were celebrating a milestone anniversary thousands of miles away, has endured a grief that is compounded by the circumstances of the crime. Mary Beth and Jeff Straub returned from their cruise to find their daughter murdered in their kitchen. The home on Longacre Lane, once a place of warmth and family memories, was forever transformed into a crime scene. As of February 2026, Samuel Todd Williams remains incarcerated, serving his consecutive life sentences without parole. The unidentified DNA samples from the duct tape remain under investigation, with genetic genealogy techniques continuing to offer hope of a breakthrough. The Lucas County Sheriff's Department maintains that the case is open, and investigators continue to follow leads. Lisa Straub was 20 years old. Johnny Clark was 21. They had their whole lives ahead of them, a relationship that their families believed was built on genuine love and mutual care, and a future that was stolen from them in the most brutal way imaginable, bound, suffocated, and left on a kitchen floor while the world outside continued on, oblivious to what had happened behind the closed doors of a quiet house on Longacre Lane.